We lost Lacey. Hi, good morning. Welcome to Milwaukee Wire. I'm Todd Phillips, host of Power Podcast and Power 30, our new web-based show. It's good to see you all here. I'm going to do a couple of quick housekeeping items and wait for people to continue to log on. I see they're coming in. And if you're Lacey, try logging out and coming back in again. That might help clear things up for you. Anyways, here we are. First annual Milwaukee Women CRE Virtual Summit. Hopefully we're live and in person next year doing the same thing because these are fun events to do live. I have to thank our sponsors, CBRE, Commercial Association of Realtors, Davis. Boy, I'm not even going to try that one, but thank you for sponsoring, Davis. Franklin, Whipfley.
Qthau, Davis and Qthau.
Is that you? Davis and Qthau. I like that. That's a good. And is that a law firm? Yeah, attorneys at law. Great. Well, thank you for sponsoring. This is us, RE Journals. We've gotten bigger over the last year and a half. We have 6 publications. We now cover 17 states, and we'll do over 150 events this year. If you have connection issues, if you're watching this online, you should see a red button right above this slide that says reconnect. So if somebody freezes up or they stop talking or something, hit that reconnect button. That'll solve 99% of your problems. If that's not solving things, try using Google Chrome. That seems to fix a lot of problems. But you can also watch this on a cell phone, tablet, any other kind of device. If one's not working, try the other. Lastly, chat room is on your right. Go in there, say hello. I'll type a hi message. And that's where you can network with other people and ask questions of our panelists. I am going to disappear and get out of the way if I can figure out how to close this down. And so who am I turning it over to? We have
Leah.
Okay. All right. You're off, Leah. Here you go.
Thank you. And thank you to Midwest Real Estate News for hosting this event and inviting us to this panel. And thank you for everyone attending. It currently looks like I just have Michelle, Alyssa, Lacey. Are you guys on? Well, Michelle, you're going to be.
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. We just can't see you. Hit your camera button.
I'm a terrible millennial.
Well, we've got Alyssa with us. Just we can hear her, not see her. So at least Michelle won't have to answer all of the questions by herself here. So thank you everyone for joining us as well. First, I'd just like to have our panel members introduce themselves. Let's start with Michelle and tell us a little bit about what you do in the industry.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Rasich, and I'm a senior project manager with JLL here in Milwaukee. I'm also actually a licensed architect, and I've been in the industry for over 12 years. I'm co-president of W Crew this year with Nicole Allard, who will be in the next panel discussion, a member of Tempo Emerging Women Leaders, and I used to be an adjunct professor at UW Milwaukee. So I'm excited to be here today with you all and discuss real estate.
Great. Thank you very much, Michelle. And I see Alyssa now. So Alyssa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for bearing with me. I've been in the commercial real estate industry for about 6 years. That whole time has been with Tri-City National Bank. There, I'm a commercial lender, specifically specializing in commercial real estate in Southeast Wisconsin. As you mentioned, I'm also in W Crew. I serve as the chair of the programs committee.
Great. Thank you. I'll try one more time. Lacey, do we have you?
She just texted me that she can't hear anything.
All right. I would tell her to log out and back on again, but we'll catch up with Lacey if she's able to join. Sorry, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us on technological issues here. So we'll just dive right into some of the questions. For the audience, if you guys do have any questions, I'll keep an eye out on the comments section and we'll try to answer those as we're going along. So I'll start with Michelle. Again, so what made you decide to join the commercial real estate industry, and were there any particular barriers to entry you found on making that decision, whether related to the fact that it's a male-dominated field or not?
So I've actually wanted to be in architecture and design and real estate since I was about 9. So, back then I didn't really think about any gender issues or that there would be any discrepancies between male and women. I didn't think about that. So it's interesting because, going into the industry and kind of really understanding a little bit more, in school, I didn't ever notice that there weren't as many boys in my class and things like that. But now that I'm in the industry, you can see some of that discrepancy. But I think you'll probably ask another question about if it would have changed my path, and it wouldn't have at all. So.
Great. Alyssa, you have a similar experience, or what made you join commercial real estate?
I definitely didn't know when to get into commercial real estate. I did finance, so with that, in Tri-Cities training program, so I did different aspects of about a full year, and then decided. I really like commercial real estate because it's a lot more flexible than, say, residential lending, and there's more of a relationship building aspect, I think. I will say that I was the first woman to go through our training program, and I don't know if this is as a result of that or what, but I did get trained in residential lending and branch operations, which are more stereotypically women's roles, I suppose. However, I see that as a strength. I'm more well-rounded now as a result of that. So same, I wouldn't change anything. I think it worked out for the best. I'm happy where I ended up.
That's great. And Lacey, I think maybe we at least have you, if you can hear us. Nope. I think she's still experiencing some technical difficulties, so we will just stick with the two we have for now. So I'm going to start out with another question that I think a lot of women and people in general have questions on when they're entering any industry, but mentors. A lot of women are interested in formal mentors. And in my experience, it's been a more informal relationship that has just naturally evolved, either because I was working with the individual or they were a client of mine. But a lot of people want to know, how do I get a mentor and what questions should I ask that mentor? And I think they're looking for specific answers on, this is how you become successful in your career. What type of mentoring, Michelle, did you have available to you, or did you find, and how did that affect your development?
Well, one of the things that, is interesting about being in a male-dominated field is that it's hard to find mentors. I think we've kind of probably all experienced that. I didn't have any women kind of in leadership that I could go to, so I had to kind of go outside of the industry. Tempo Emerging Women Leaders, they have a mentorship program, so I was able to find some mentors that way, which has been amazing. I also think that having peer mentors has been a really solid way to go about learning about yourself in your professional careers, having people who are your cheerleaders. And so I don't think it necessarily has to be someone who is above you or who has more experience than you, but I think finding mentors that are the same as you or people who are going through the same experiences is really helpful. And then I would say that the last part is, having a really diverse group of people that you can talk to. So like you said, it doesn't have to be a formal mentorship situation, but just being able to really say, okay, I'm thinking about changing my position. Who can I go to talk about that? Or I want to grow in this, separate field. Then who can you talk to about that? So diversifying who you have as mentors, I think is really helpful too.
And have you found it helpful to have both male and female mentors in the industry?
Yeah, and I think anyone who is an advocate for you can be a mentor. So whether it could be your mom and anyone who's kind of understands and can listen to what you're going through in your career. And obviously men is also important because they have different outlooks, and diversity of thought is always helpful.
Alyssa, have you had a similar experience, or what type of mentorship have you found most helpful?
Well, I was fortunate. Like I said, I came up in a training program through Tri-City. So that came with a lot of built-in mentors, people specifically tasked with training us, as well as we just have a great team culture. So I felt comfortable just calling anyone in the bank. As I mentioned earlier, 90% of them were men, but always happy to help and answer. There's no stupid questions, answer whatever I needed help with. I'll also give a little shout out to Heather Nelson. I feel it's not a formal anything, but she just does a great job of pushing me to do things that maybe I don't think I feel ready for. I think she does that for everyone she knows, but has definitely helped advance me in my career.
Is there any advice you'd give to somebody entering commercial real estate on how they can find a mentor, or how to have the confidence, I guess, to approach somebody and ask them to fill that role for them? Michelle, maybe we'll start with you. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. I think, just really looking for women who are, or men who are in the positions that you want to be in. I think being comfortable and just knowing that when you ask someone to be a mentor, that it's actually like very flattering for them. So don't be afraid to ask anyone. I think, if you can do it in a way that's not like, hey, can you be my mentor? But hey, can you give me advice? Or, let's have coffee and talk about a specific situation you're dealing with. I think that's ultimately the best way to go about it, and just not being afraid and just kind of just putting yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Very agree with that is key. And that you don't have to say, do you want to be my mentor? That sounds heavy. But what do you think I should do about this? Do you think I should do this? Those are easy asks that are just like little tidbits of advice that form those greater relationships. And also just get involved in things. It starts by meeting people in the industry. And then I think those kinds of relationships develop organically.
So that kind of actually led me to the next question I was going to ask you. So Alyssa, I know you had said you had a formal training program that really helped you at least meet people within your industry and develop some mentorships, but is there anything besides mentorships that you found particularly helpful to advance your career?
I think questions and just being in a constant state of learning. You're never going to know it all. So that's my best piece of advice there, I guess. Everyone has a learning opportunity.
Michelle, you have anything to add to that besides mentorship? Any particular programs or activities or things like that you found very helpful?
No, but I think just being prepared to pivot in whatever role that you're in. I think, focusing on what your strengths are and making sure that you're kind of developing your career based on what your strengths are versus what someone else might think your strengths are. I think that is key to success for anyone. So that would be my best advice, is just being prepared to pivot and really understanding what your strengths are.
And Leah, you bring up programs. I will say, unfortunately, Lacey's not here to say it, but we just finished the CAR-W Next Gen program, which has been a great opportunity to meet people in similar places of their career as us, as well as interact with people who've been in the industry for long term. So that's been a great program to help get involved.
So that program is, maybe tell people a little bit about that program if there's new folks in the industry looking to get involved.
Yep. So it's a one-year program. I think about 20 people in all the different industries of commercial real estate. And then once a month, they have a panel discussion, say brokers, architects, et cetera, of like 4 experienced people in that industry that come and speak to us and are happy to be mentors or answer questions, et cetera.
Yeah, so I'm in my experience, at least with commercial real estate and in Milwaukee, and I'm sure it's similar everywhere else, we have an abundant opportunity of groups and events and networking. There's CAR-W, there's NIOP, there's W Crew. All 3 of us on screen right now, and Lacey, are all W Crew members as well. So there's just tons of events and opportunities to go out and meet people. And I personally feel that that's very important. I started doing that probably the first week that I became a real estate attorney. And I will say that it was terrifying. I didn't know anybody in the industry. And my advice on that would just be to have the confidence to just start showing up at those events. So have you guys found any challenges in navigating more of that social aspect of the industry? Because I do think that real estate is a very social industry, and a lot of your development does require you to meet new people.
Yeah, I can start out with that one. So I'm also a working mom. So, you talk about the struggles of kind of like networking and having after hours events and things, but I think setting it as a priority in our realm of real estate and networking is important, and making sure that you can, be at some of the events and kind of creating a network while you go to the events, I think is helpful too. Having people that you see constantly at each event that you know that you can talk to or have a relationship with has always helped me.
Yeah, I'm in a little different stage of life. I live alone. I have no pets, no kids. I have no responsibilities. It's great. But as a result, I found that it's not like separate. This is my work. This is my personal life. They've just kind of meshed into one. My coworkers are my friends. The people I'm networking with are my friends. But then I don't look at it as like, I don't know. I just have a to-do list of things I want to get done in a day. And whenever things fit in, just works. And I think that provides some flexibility and takes some of the stress off trying to squeeze everything in.
I'm going to jump back to one of the prior questions because someone did actually post a question for us. So thank you, Corey. Do you feel that mentors have more actively sought you out? I'll direct this at Michelle first, or have you more actively sought mentorship back? And I guess that kind of leads into the question of, or a comment we probably should have made earlier, is that I think in addition to having male and female and a broad range of mentorships, you should have a broad range of ages as well. And maybe it's not a typical mentor-mentee relationship. Maybe it's reciprocal. Michelle, have you felt that you are seeking more mentors, or are you now having people come to you to fill that role?
I would say that it's been more me seeking mentors. I think that, everyone gets busy in their daily activities, and, it's hard to kind of say, hey, I want to go out and find someone to mentor. But I would say that it's something that I want to make as a priority when I'm, growing in the industry, because I've found that when I've been able to mentor others, it's given me just as much, I've gotten so much out of it as I hope that they're getting from me. So I think it goes both ways with mentorship, and I think it's just really valuable.
Agreed. I've have some appear partially through work and whatnot. But I wouldn't sit back and expect that to happen by any means. If you don't have the mentors in your life that you want in your life, then that's when you have to be active, make those connections. And like I said, start small. A little tidbit of advice is all it takes, I think, to start that relationship.
Great, thank you. So kind of going back to the networking aspect, since there are so many opportunities, and there's lunches, and there's lunch and learns, and there's drinking events for a lot of the time, and sporting events, has there been any particular type of networking that you guys have found have been more helpful for your career, or do you keep it mixed?
I would say that the events that I found that are the most beneficial are when I can have like a long conversation with someone one-on-one and really make a connection. So for me, I kind of look for events that I know that I'm going to be able to really talk to one person and have a good quality conversation with them. Because I know that when I've gone to networking events and somebody is like, you can tell that people are just like scanning the room for more important people to talk to. That's one of the things that I think is just awful. But I think finding events that that you can really have a conversation and connect with people and make those kind of really personal connections is always the ones that I gravitate to.
Yeah, I agree. I like to get to a good mix. As I mentioned, education is key, so got to keep that going. But as far as networking, it's not always there at those events. The social ones are the ones where you're making the connection. But to Michelle's point, it's all about the follow through there. So, okay, you meet someone, you have a nice conversation. Then you got to email them, you got to get coffee, you got to keep that relationship going. Because a year from now, you're not going to remember the person you spoke to one time. I approach networking as, can you become my friend? Like, I want to know about your personal life. I want that to stick. So that's kind of the way I approach it.
I think that follow-up point is a really good point. I get asked a lot from new lawyers entering the field, how do you build a book of business? How do you start? How do you get clients? And first of all, it takes a very long time. I'm sure it does in your industries as well. And I think people have a lot of people have a mentality of, oh, I went to coffee. This is it. I'll get this as a client somewhere down the line, or this will build a relationship. And I think you're right. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of consistency. And that kind of goes back to my prior point. I think it's something that you should do right away once you enter the industry, which is difficult because you don't know anybody and you don't really know anything about the industry. So talking to people at those events can be challenging, but I definitely think that helps facilitate your career a lot faster.
Absolutely. Questions. But people love when you ask them about yourself, their opinions. Oh my gosh, they're so flattered when you are trying to get their opinions.
So again, going back to, commercial real estate is still a more male-dominated industry. Is there anything that you do to prep for some social events so that you feel that you can be more part of the conversation? I know a lot of women. First of all, I know a lot of women that like sports. I'm not a sports person. I don't sport. But I know a lot of people that will keep up on a headline of sports so they can participate in the conversations. I myself am happy to listen to those conversations. I have no idea who people are talking about during it. But is there anything that you would advise people to do to prepare for networking, particularly in this industry?
I mean, I want it to be genuine. Like, I'm also not sportsy. So I mean, I'm not going to pretend I am. It's just, it's not one of my interests, but right. Happy to listen. But I think you need to be genuinely who you are. Sometimes you get nervous. So I don't do this very often, but have like a backup list of go-to questions in your head. That way, if there's an awkward silence and you're feeling uncomfortable, you're prepared to handle that uncomfortable situation.
I am a sportsy person, but I wouldn't say that I'm like talking about sports necessarily at networking events. But I would say that like getting involved in some of like the more, like, for instance, I have gotten really into golf. So getting involved in things, you don't have to be good at golf to play golf. Like, you can just go and play. And it's one of those networking things that both male and female can do together. And it's not something that you should be intimidated by, because we've been doing the golf outing for W Crew, and I think it's been enlightening for a lot of women to see, hey, this is actually a fun thing you can do, especially now with COVID, to have something as a networking opportunity with male and females.
That's a great point on that as well. I mean, especially this year, golf seems to be like the only way people seem to be comfortable networking. And I think that's such a barrier for so many women who don't feel comfortable golfing. So just do it. No, well, some people are good. Most people aren't good. You're always playing scramble. No one's there to judge you. It's just to get out and have a good time and meet some new people. So just do it.
I feel like Alyssa might have been addressing that last one at me. I don't golf. I'll have to learn how to actually hit the ball, and then maybe I'll come golfing with you next year. So specifically now a little bit more towards your networking with women. Have you found specific ways to connect with other women in the industry, given that there are fewer of us in this industry? And have you found those connections particularly helpful?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that has been a focus for us in W Crew, and I've said this a million times, is making like those personal relationships so that you can feel comfortable doing business together. And I think that's a goal for so many of us, is to find our network that we can continue to like send our clients to and feel comfortable with. So I would say that, making those relationships, I've like Alyssa said, Heather Nelson has been somebody who has been a great mentor and also like been really good at connecting women together to try to do business together. So I would say it's really making those personal relationships that turn into professional relationships and keeping them like going. Like Alyssa said, making sure you're still going out to coffee and and staying connected with people, because one time you can't have coffee one time and think that you're gonna do business together later on. So I think just keeping those relationships fresh is important too.
Right. To follow up on that, yeah, W huge for me for forming relationships with other women in the industry. There's also Tempo. I mean, there's women groups out there. I think a huge part is, though, you can't just join and say, okay, check that box, I did it, I'm in. You've got to get involved. You've got to play a part. You've got to be invested in the organization or the mission or what you want to get from it. What you put in is what you're going to get out. So that, I think, is key.
I like that point, Alyssa. I think looking a little bit outside your industry sometimes for that isn't a bad idea, right? Because knowing more people is just beneficial for your career in general and making those connections. So organizations like Tempo that aren't just focused on real estate are still go to organizations to look into. And I believe they have like an emerging women's group or something like that from Tempo as well. So Do you, Michelle, do you feel that it is important as a woman to specifically build those relationships and try to cross business with other women in the industry? And is there any particular way that you do that?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think it's, a goal it should be a goal for all of us. I think execution is difficult. And I know, like, for me, it has nothing to do with male or female, but for me, it's who I can count on to make sure that my clients are taken care of. So that's hard to do if you don't know people well enough. So I think really making connections with people and giving women the chance, making sure that when you send out an RFP, it's always going to, a woman that you've worked with, or just kind of looking out for each other. And I think it's really important. The execution of it is sometimes more difficult, but I think just always keeping it at top of mind is key.
Yeah, I what Michelle said. And you're right. It goes back to the relationships that you're forming. You're not going to send a deal to that person if you don't know them well enough. I feel like networking with other women has kind of become my niche, I suppose, just because, I mean, we didn't have anybody at Tri-City and W Crew and that kind of thing. So these became my contacts, which definitely makes it much easier to send deals their way.
So have either, go ahead, Michelle.
I was just gonna add that, like, I think that I've heard so many times that, like, men don't really, like, they're recommending their buddy that they don't really know that well because they heard that he, did something. And women always have this more like ownership to making sure that their clients are taken care of. So, some part of me like wants to say, hey, like, let's stop doing that. Let's just always invite women to be part of our teams and whatever it is. But I think it's just kind of the nature of who we are. And like I said, I think the execution of it for us is just a little bit different.
So kind of along those lines, have either of you felt the next panel that's going to be speaking, they started in this real estate industry at a much different time than we started in this real estate industry. So they definitely face different challenges. Do you find that you've faced any specific challenges just by virtue of being a female in this industry?
I don't think there's anything quite that pointed, like, oh, I'm not going to send you a deal because you're a woman. Like, I have not experienced that by any means. But there's still, I mean, I guess the shell shock of walking into a room full of men. We talked about discussing sports. I'm just like, that's not what I'm here to talk about. That's not what I know about. So I think there's that feeling of, like, not quite fitting in or being included, that's a little difficult to overcome.
Yeah, I would say something similar. I've always felt like I've had to work 4 times harder, maybe 5 times harder to prove myself in, what I've been doing, especially in the architecture realm. It's just one of those things that you think, oh, a man is more, it fits the man's personality a little bit better. So I always felt like I've had to work harder to get where I am. But I don't, I think I do feel like that's changing a lot. And I do feel like we're going in the right direction, but I definitely feel like I've had some obstacles with being a woman in the industry.
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot. And when I've sat down and thought about it, and it's not to say that we don't have hurdles. I do think we certainly have fewer hurdles than there used to be, but it is a male dominated industry. And I would say probably 95% of my clients are male. But when I think about that, that means my 95% of male clients, it doesn't matter to them that I'm a female attorney. They just want to work with a good attorney, somebody that they trust, and it's never become an issue. So personally, I haven't experienced it much. I was lucky when I started out with my prior firm. The head of that real estate department was female. She's fantastic, Debbie Tomczyk. I'm sure a lot of people on here know her. She was a fantastic mentor for me, and that might have had a lot to do with it because she paved the way, particularly in that firm. But I haven't found anything. Same thing. I've never had anyone go, I'm not working with her. She's a female. So similarly along those lines, given that a lot of leadership in companies today are still male, is there anything that you think the leadership could be doing different in companies to make sure that women are included or are more comfortable at events walking into a room, you know, that's 95% male. That wasn't on my list of questions.
I think just making sure that women are in the room, part of recruiting efforts, just making sure that you see people similar to yourself in interviews and whatnot, and that they're part of the decision making and whatnot. So just making sure women are part of that. I think we've made at Tri-City, we've made a huge push in the last several years. We now have women as heads of multiple departments, whereas 5 years ago that wasn't so much the case. So I think it's not because they're women, but just opening your eyes and I don't know how to finish that sentence, but
No, that made sense. I was just going to follow up on that. I think exactly finding, looking at where you feel like you see when people like you in leadership. I think one of the best lines that I've heard is diversity of thought is good for business. And I think looking at, the leadership of a company and seeing that there are women in leadership is, it's something that I look for. And I think that it's something that, is important as we're moving through our careers.
I will also add that leaders should be kind of what I said Heather does, be a mentor, reach out to people, give them a little push. Ooh, because like men, what's the statistic? Men are like more likely to apply for a job that they're like 2/3 qualified for, but women are less likely to do so. So help push people along and they'll rise to the occasion.
I think that's a really good point that you just brought up, Alyssa, and it's a strange statistic, and to some extent we're doing that to ourselves, right? Because we're not applying for those jobs. So any advice to women that are sitting there thinking, oh, you know what, I'm not going to apply for that, I'll wait 2 more years, I'll get 2 more years of experience rather than just kind of jumping in the deep end. Oh, Michelle, I think you're on mute.
All right. Well, I was going to say, I've talked to a few women recently who have been in that situation, or that they, feel like they should be getting a raise, but they're worried about, the situation with COVID and should I be asking for more? And, I think just being confident and we do need to be more assertive with our abilities and understanding that we are just as good as anybody else. And I think for me, I'm always like, well, I'm a mom and I have other things at home that are distractions. And so I see that as a barrier, but I think seeing it more as a strength is so important because, I'm able to multitask in ways that other people can't, or, looking at your situation and saying, hey, I've got strengths that are beyond what's in this, job description. I think that's really important.
So Michelle, and you mentioned, and you do have children at home. Have you found hurdles either particular to this industry or just in general about finding that work-life balance? And has that negatively impacted your development at all or your advancement in your field?
I think that I haven't let it impact my development. I think it could have. Being at your desk, especially in the design industry, being at your desk and focusing on working is so much part of that world. But moving more into the JLL side of commercial real estate and the project management side has helped me to be able to find a role that really fits my life. And I think that is important for anyone who feels like, I don't know if I can have a family and do the job that I'm doing, because I think it's just, you have to make it work for you, and finding the right company or the right role or whatever it is imperative.
And Alyssa, I know you said you have no pets. Maybe we'll get you a fish. But if you find any difficulty, and it certainly, I do think it is easier. I also don't have children, so I have not struggled as much with the work-life balance. I have 2 fur babies. And I think that does make it easier to attend events pre-COVID when we actually had in-person networking events. So any advice to people that are trying to balance that in general? And Michelle, maybe that's back to you a little bit more.
No, I do think I have something to contribute. I mean, I think everyone feels that there's just so much going on. And no one, regardless of what other things they have going on in their life, can make it to everything. So I think a lot of times that's the first approach, just like go to everything and see what you like. But then you really got to narrow it down and figure out what's the best fit for you and focus on a couple things, because no one can do it all. You'll get burnt out.
Yeah, I mean, and that's sometimes why I give younger women that are starting out in the industry the advice to push harder at first, because you might actually have more flexibility earlier on in your career with your work-life balance for that. And the further along you get in your career, arguably, maybe the less networking you have to do, or you've already established those relationships. So even though it's more uncomfortable to do up front because you don't know what you're talking about, it might be the best timing for you to start doing it. So switching gears just a little bit, kind of going into how things have been going with COVID. I feel like pre-COVID, there was a reluctance for a lot of companies to allow people to work from home. And I think that especially for women, that flexibility has always been something that we've looked for, again, for more of that work-life balance. So if you have been working from home, and I'm not sure if either of you have you found that that's had a negative effect on your role in your company at all?
I have been working from home, and I don't think it's had a negative effect at all, because most of us are working from home. There'll be times when our colleagues are getting back in the office. We've had a few of them going back, and you feel like you're not connected. But I think that if you just make an effort to, set up calls and make sure that you're staying connected, then there's no issues with working from home. But I have heard that, especially for women, that visibility is something that's, key to us, like getting promotions or, moving up in our careers. And if you're not there, you're not seen. And so I think that one of the things that we have to keep in mind is, if we are going to be working from home, how do we stay connected with our bosses, with the leadership, and making sure that what we are doing is being, not necessarily being seen, but being acknowledged. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I was working from the office the whole time, but I will say, throughout COVID, I don't think anyone weren't seen by other people. We were in different branches, so I wasn't seen by my boss. We were definitely, everyone was on their own little island. But you're right. So I think just gauging everyone's comfort levels and coming up with creative ways to still stay connected and get together is important. I know we got all zoomed out, but I think that's coming back this winter, and I think we'll just have to make the best of it.
Yeah, and I think those are good points, especially the bigger your organization to stay seen. And Michelle, you're kind of going to my next question. Is it difficult to stay seen working from home? Now, to your point, it's not just women working from home. A lot of people are working from home, and you think that would balance that out. But I do think you need to stay cognizant and active. Do you feel that there's going to be a shift where, even in a world post-COVID, there's going to be more flexibility for people to be working from home? Do you feel that your companies or companies in general might maintain that flexibility because perhaps their workers are happier, or their women workers are happier because they're able to have more of that balance?
Yeah, I think that, I don't think the office space is going away. And so I think that there is going to be a different use for office. And I don't think, I think working from home is going to stay as part of our everyday life. And I think I've enjoyed the flexibility of it. I don't know about everyone else, but I also think that being in the office and being able to collaborate with your team is extremely important. And I think I see somebody was chatting too that they've had difficulty with their, when they're part of their team is together and they're working remotely, it makes you feel like you're not doing your job well. And I think that all of us have felt like that at some point, maybe. So really figuring out how we can make sure that we've got that opportunity to be in the office, but also working from home maybe a few days a week. I think a lot of companies are going to have to figure out what that balance is.
Yeah, I definitely do foresee a shift of more normalized work from home. I think a lot of managers have just realized how much can get done when everyone's home. To your point, teamwork is crucial. So I think there will be that hybrid of a few days home, a few days in the office. But I think the employee will have a lot more flexibility to kind of decide what that looks like for themselves.
Great. So is there any consistent behaviors, well, Michelle, I'll start with you, that have helped you get to your point in this career? And I know you've been in various roles in the commercial real estate industry. And is there anything in particular that's kind of carried through from all of those roles that's been helpful for you?
I was echoing, sorry. I think one of the things that is, top of mind is just never giving up. So whether it be, in a role where I didn't necessarily love what I was doing, or whether it be that something was really difficult, I kind of always stayed with the mentality of never giving up. So always seeing something through. And I don't know if that really answers your question, but from the design industry all the way through to what I'm doing now in project management, being able to pivot and understand what my strengths are has helped me to move from different roles. And I've always said that I'm not the stereotypical architect. So kind of using that to my advantage and not saying, okay, I'm going to need to sit behind a computer for the next 40 years and design, but seeing how I could use my strengths to find a different role that really fits what I do best. So I think that's key.
For me, I think it's being uncomfortable. I found that typically the best things have come out of something I initially didn't want to do. Usually that initial reaction, whether it be to go to this event or to speak on this panel, is out of fear. And usually I found like the best things come out of those things that I initially didn't want to do, but I push myself, just suck it up and do it. And that's when things go well. Another thought is Milwaukee's so small. Just don't burn any bridges. You never know when you're going to come across somebody again, who else they're going to know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's huge as well.
So going back a little bit to our discussion on entering this field, and maybe you guys had a different experience than me, but I didn't even know the various careers that were available in commercial real estate. I didn't really know any careers available in commercial real estate, and I kind of fell into being a commercial real estate attorney just based on where I had interned when I was back in law school. I'm grateful that I did. It's not something I even considered or really realized was, no one ever talks about real estate attorneys outside of the real estate world. And I never had any job fairs that had come to my colleges or even to the law school that even talked about real estate related careers. So how did you find the particular career? And I guess what would you say people could do differently so that women were more aware of all these various opportunities, from brokerage to financing to development, architectural, engineering, all these careers that are in real estate that nobody really talks about?
Well, I would say that I always thought real estate brokers were the only real estate thing that you could do. So I never, and maybe that's naive of me, but I never even thought about how the design background could fit into real estate. And so I think it's important that we, as women, as people at this point in our careers, kind of work to get that knowledge to students in colleges. Going to, I should be, and it's something that I want to work on, but I should be going to UWM and talking to the different classes about how their careers could go into project management or something that's real estate related. Going to job fairs for high schools. I've done that before. And, it's so awesome to see how kids can spark an interest for them to say, oh, that's kind of what I've always wanted to do, but I didn't know that's what it was called, or I didn't know that was something that was a job. So I think just, if we can all kind of put that on our priority list of things to do, is to work with the next generation to figure out how to inspire them to understand what the different roles in real estate are. I think that's what we needed to do.
Yeah, I certainly stumbled upon it and didn't see myself ending up here. As I think when I talk to people, that seems to be the case with most. So, right, exactly to Michelle's point, you got to start young. You've got to make it something that you care about and something that you're trying to help solve. As well as, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but W Crew has a program just like this where we're going into schools to try and educate high school women about their options. What careers are out there?
Crew careers.
Thanks.
That's great. And I'm glad you brought up the W Crew one, because I know I've done some events with Crew where we were at the college level with the Marquette students. And a lot of times they were working, I think, with the real estate center that's at the school. But I personally think at that level, it's almost too late. There still are far fewer women in those classes. And most of them probably are in those classes either because somebody in their life was in real estate. So I think the high school level is key. I would have loved for somebody to come to my high school and tell me about the possibilities for these types of career paths, when I was 16, before I was going to college and picking my minor. So I agree that it's really important to start engaging women in this industry or thinking about this industry, or even just letting them know that this industry exists at a much younger age. I think we have a few minutes left here, so I guess I'll ask one more question. If you were starting over, if you're brand new into this industry again, what piece of advice would you give yourself, or what piece of advice would you give someone starting out in a career with commercial real estate today? And not necessarily just women, just brand new people in general.
I can answer this one first because I think I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And I think one of the things that I didn't do early on in my career is be assertive enough about what I wanted or where I wanted to go, or what my goals were. Maybe mostly probably because I didn't know. But I think being really assertive in how you are approaching each role and making sure that you are, really advocating for yourself and not being afraid to say, hey, I want some different experience, or I want to move up, in this role. I think just really being assertive is the one takeaway that I would like to give to anyone who's starting out in the career.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. In fact, something I'm still working on 5 years later. But that's so important. In the earlier you start, it's a growing process, the better. Also, to kind of spiral off something that Leah said earlier, but now is the time to be involved, right? When you don't have the things to be juggling, you may feel like you don't have much to bring to the table. You're young, you don't know enough, whatever. But those are all just the doubts in your head. Just get out there, do it. Now's the time to set yourself up for your future.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just going to ask the audience if they have any last minute questions. I know our contact information was available on this. I know that we've talked a lot about various organizations that you can become involved in. Certainly, if anybody on here has questions about that or wants a list of those or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure Michelle and Alyssa feel the same way. And we just really appreciate everybody taking the time. We're going to give you a little bit of a break here before your next panel starts. So thank you again for joining us, and we appreciate it.
Awesome panel. Thank you very much. Good group. In the chat room, I put a link to our next panel. So go back to the lobby. You'll be able to see speaker bios and click on there for the new lobby. See you all in 10 minutes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.